Welcome everybody. I hope you've had a good week of acrylic painting. While you weren't looking, I went ahead and painted the grass on this area, and I did the road, and I added this tree on the right, and I think it's finished now. Amber likes it.
It's pretty.
And I added 2 more coats to these little girls. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off all this paper I don't need. This makes about 6-7 layers of the acrylic gel medium on here. And the deal is you have to soak it in water, just tap water, until you can peel this away from this. So I've got water in this little pan. I'm gonna let it sit. It may take overnight. It just depends. I've worked on this one a little bit. I made this car more silver, which it is in real life, and I redid the parking lot, and this is where the parking lot is wet. I still have to finish the car, put in the little concrete things that keep you from driving over the bank, a tree here, and nice reflections in the water, the sun reflections. That's going to be the most fun part. What I'm going to do next is show you how to do something that is symmetrical. And what I mean by that is it's the same on the left as it is on the right. And this gives people a lot of trouble. But I'm going to try to show you the easy way to do it. And think of bottles and some buildings and things like that. When I went out the other day and shot some new slides, what I got was some buildings. And I got this church steeple. And what I'm going to do is just like in grade school when we made Valentine's, I'm going to do half of it. I'm going to fold this in half. Next week is our last week of acrylic, isn't it?
Yep, then we start drawing.
Yep. Okay. So this is, I think, a little bit bigger than the canvas I'm using, so I don't get confused. I'm going to do this. Okay, so at least it's the same height. So, I wish I brought a ruler instead of a yardstick, but if wishes were wings, frogs wouldn't bump their butts when they jumped, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is about the halfway point of this steeple. So I'm going to start a little below the top of the paper. I'll start about here. I'm going to come down. And then it kicks out, little angle out like this, and then it goes straight again. Then you got a little ledge that sticks out. Now this part of the steeple is wider than what I've just drawn, so I'm going to set my straight edge further from the fold here, so I get all that in there. And it's pretty long. It's about half as tall as the steeple. That's about half. in my drawing class, I'm going to teach you the first day the secret of how to draw things and get them in proportion. It's probably the most important thing I can teach you as an instructor, because you can use it in any drawing or any painting. So you're not going to end up with objects this big on a canvas this big. You know, if I did a still life here, and I've got grapes and a banana and apples and all that sort of thing here, and a wine bottle that's only here, I've got all this empty space. I'm going to show you how to use all this space. So tune in, check that out. Hopefully it can help you. So this juts out like before. I am not a steeplejack, a builder of steeples, so I do not know what these parts are called. I know a lot about excuse me, construction, but I do not know what these parts are called. A lot of times, steeples to me are not in proportion to either themselves or the church building underneath. Usually they're not tall enough. This is a nice, tall, graceful one. It's got good lines in it. That's why I chose it. And I know expense is a lot of it when churches are first built. You know, when the great cathedrals were built in the Middle Ages and the beginning of the Renaissance, it was all a competition. This city was trying to outdo its neighboring city, saying, you know, it's got the biggest cathedral or the tallest or the greatest stained glass going on in the area or whatever. And of course, they all wanted to draw the faithful, the pilgrims, who would migrate there for religious holidays. So it was a moneymaker for the towns and the church. So they weren't just built for beauty, they were built for those things. I just watched like a 27 part course. No, it was more than that. It was 3 DVDs on cathedrals. There's probably 65 courses on cathedrals. It's very interesting. I don't think the guy used one note. It was all in his head. Reminds me of a high school teacher I had, English. You never saw Miss Van Horn sit down. She was always standing at her lectern. And she sort of talked like this, you know, she real little old lady like. And she was a good teacher. Not easy, but good. And the first semester was grammar, and the second semester, which probably safe back hide, was literature. I was never good at diagramming sentences and all that, but I was good at reading and whatnot. But anyway, she was in class one day, and UPS had just opened a distribution center very close to us, and a lot of the older guys were getting jobs there, and they'd work all night and come in, and they'd be worn out. And this class was in the afternoon, and this one guy was sitting beside the radiator, beside the window, and he started nodding off like this, you know. He couldn't help it. And so Miss Van Horn was looking, and he was sitting about right there, and she said, "Somebody wake up Carl before he falls and hurts himself." She never got mad at him. I mean,
As quiet as can be.
She was funny that way. What I was looking for was this. Let me use this next. But anyway, you know, you remember the individualistic teachers, the ones that have style of teaching. I also had a guy that was supposed to be teaching the business math course I was taking, and he was dating some gal down in North Carolina, so he'd come in on Mondays, and I had him in the afternoon, and he would say, okay, work pages 55 through 60, and he'd put his head down on the desk and fall asleep.
The teacher?
Yes. I think that was one of the sorriest teachers I had.
Yeah.
Had a PE teacher that showed, instead of teaching us health and biology, parts of the body and all that sort of stuff that health should cover, when we weren't in gym, he ran films from the Ohio Department of Transportation of all these horrific car wrecks and blood and limbs that were laying everywhere and trying to, I guess, scare us. Plus, he didn't have to do anything. I mean, you know, there's always some kid, oh, I'll run the projector, Mr. Janice.
Yep.
And it was right after lunch, and kids were leaving the room from left and right. It was awful. The boy in front of me always wore a plaid shirt, and I got to the point where I could memorize every plaid in his shirt because I couldn't watch the screen. I mean, it was like what you see in ER in real life, not on TV. Gross to the max. So, what I'm going to do now is cut this steeple out. And hopefully it will work the way I want it to. This thing I picked up out of my kit over there, this roller, it's really used for printmaking. It's an ink applicator, but artists being the creative sort that we are, decided we'd use it in the world of painting. It's called a brayer, B-R-A-Y-E-R, and it works great for putting an even layer of paint down on your canvas, if you do it right. So I'm going to paint this sky in behind this steeple with this brayer, and hopefully it will all go right as soon as I get this thing cut out. But I tell my drawers, you know, this is not cheating, this is saving time. I don't want you to be frustrated, I want you to succeed. And any trick that can make things go easier for you that I know about, I'm going to teach you. But a lot of my college professors would come in at the beginning of class, take a roll, and make the assignment, and then go back to the lounge and grade other classes' work or smoke or whatever they did. They weren't in there the whole 90 minutes or 3 hours or however long the class was.
That's probably why teachers don't get paid like they should these days.
I never told my parents that. I think they would have been a little more irate than they were about the rates.
I had a couple of those teachers. Like, even though going to that class you was going to get you a good nap in. Most of them were near retirement, so they were just like, whatever. Somebody had a question from last week. They're painting like an ocean scene, and they wanted to know if there's any techniques or texture things for the sand to make it actually look like sand.
Okay, good question. Most people, when they're doing a seascape, make sand way, way too yellow. The sand on the East Coast, north of Florida, I'll say, is sort of a light beige. And the best way to get it is to use a little bit of yellow and a little bit of burnt umber and then enough white to get the value you're wanting in the sand. And you can use that as an underpainting, base coat, whatever. And then after that dries, if you want, you can go back in with that toothbrush and splatter a little bit darker, same mixture on there, and that helps give that sense of granulation, which would be very tedious to try to do with the brush. Okay. So that's not too bad.
Looks like the Empire
It
State.
does, it does. Okay, what I want to do first though is go ahead and paint all this a medium blue. So let me get some cobalt. I'm going to use this. And a little bit of cerulean, if it hasn't dried out. I noticed today when I came in, more cobalt, that my paints aren't drying out from the bottom up, they're drying out from the top down, because when I quit painting at the afternoon, I'm not spritzing them with water. So what I've done is go in and really spritz them today by just flicking water on, since my spray bottle does not spray like a spray bottle should. So I'm going to take a good glob of white and take some of this and mix in here. There's like no variation in this sky, so that's why this is a good technique for this. And you can see just a few parts of the church, but it's surrounded by trees. So it's the sky, the steeple, and trees. So I thought this would be an easy painting to do. Famous last words, right?
Yeah.
Oh, you can't get lost from here. Take the shortcut. 17 miles later, out in the middle of nowhere, you realize they've been having their fun with you and pulling your leg. Been there, done that. While I mix up my blue. My last 9-to-5 type job was working at Kroger food store, and I worked 3 positions there. The last of which was as a cashier, and I met all kinds of people, both customers and employees. But I'll tell you about this one employee that sort of frustrated everybody. I'll call him Gary. And you would look at him and say, "Gary," and he'd give you one of these looks. And I always thought when I was a bagger that I was one of the world's oldest baggers, but there was a guy even older than me. And he was a nice guy. And one day it was just pouring down rain. I mean, just bucketed down. And of course, Gary didn't have a coat or jacket or anything to go out and get carts. So Ernie said, "Gary, you want to borrow my coat to go out?" And Gary just looked at him like this. And so he went out without a jacket and he came back in, and he looked like he'd been swimming in a swimming pool in his clothes. Ernie was telling me about it, and I said, "I believe that. I believe that wholeheartedly."
Did he never speak?
Huh?
Did he never speak?
No, he didn't.
He just looked at you funny?
Yeah. I mean, it was worse than a deer in headlights. It was just like this, the dumbest expression I can describe. So anyway, Ernie's wife was a nurse. And somehow or another, I found out that Gary wanted to be a nurse. So I told Ernie that he wanted to be a nurse. And we both just shook our heads and laughed and said, can you imagine him in ER or, I mean, an emergency room? You know, this case comes in, you gotta do 10 cc's of this and clear the room and do the voltage and everything. Poor Gary's gonna be standing there like this, and the guy's gonna be dying on the table. But the best example was me one day, and I worked, you know, all days of the week, and I was working a Sunday morning, and this guy only shopped on Sunday morning, and he was an older man, and he always wanted paper bags, and he only came in once a week on Sunday, and Gary was my bagger. So I turned before the guy even got up to my register. I could see him coming. I said, this man likes paper bags. So I'm unloading the guy's cart and helping him get stuff on the belt and whatnot. I turn around and Gary's putting stuff in plastic bags. I said, Gary, this gentleman likes paper bags, you know, about that clear. And so I go back to, you know, scanning groceries and whatnot, and the guy looks over, and Gary's just stuffing stuff in plastic bags as hard as he can, and he says, son, I want paper bags. And I look over, and Gary's still just chucking stuff in plastic.
Yeah.
So I looked at Gary, I said, Gary, the customer wants paper. Don't use plastic. You know, how clear can I make it?
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm running things down across the counter, scanner, and down the counter, and I look over and he's still using plastic. So I just looked at the guy, I said, I don't hire him, I just work with him.
Oh, Lord.
I was embarrassed.
Is he deaf or?
No, he was just dumb as a brick.
Oh.
One day, I had a medical emergency in my life, and it's not funny, but this little old lady, we had a senior citizen home in town, and one outside of town, and one on the edge of town. So, you know, they brought them in their bus to get groceries. And this little old lady comes in, and what I'm trying to do with the brayer is get an even coat of paint. And what I was doing with the knife there was picking out goobers, little hard pieces of paint or whatever that I didn't want in there. So anyway, she gets up to me, and she had a very distinctive face. I mean, she wasn't pretty, she wasn't ugly, it was just, once you saw her, you never forgot her. So anyway, she's unloading things, and I'm helping her unload, and I could tell she was gonna faint. So I reach out to grab her, and I got a handful of sweater, and she slipped out of her sweater. So I turned to my bagger. Fortunately, it wasn't Gary. And I said, give me a hand over here. So he comes over, he gets her right side, I'm hanging on to her left side. The guy behind her is already on the phone calling 911. Well, anyway, we get her up to a bench, and then, you know, the rescue squad comes and everything. Low blood sugar or something, you know, nothing serious. So a couple months later, she comes through my line again, and she looks up at me and she says, remember me? I said, yes, ma'am, I do.
Yeah, thank goodness I wasn't Gary, your bagger.
Every day was different. And I don't care what people say, you could always tell when it was a full moon. Nurses that work in emergency rooms will swear to this, and I will swear to this. That's when the weirdos came in, by the busload.
I feel like that sometimes here.
I'm sure. But some days it was like Screaming Child Day, and some days it was Grouchy Customer Day, and some days it was they wanted to talk to you about all their personal problems. And you know, I've got like 10 people lined up to do the register, And I'm the only cashier, and here's this person wanting to tell me about their gallbladder operation and how they feel better, and they don't have much scar because it came out through their navel, and I'm like, yes sir, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad that's working for you, trying to, you know, speed up the process. And they're just going, well, let me tell you about this other operation. I said, do it next time,
That's the worst is when you're like, how are you doing? And then it's
Then they
they're
start
on.
telling you.
Yeah. Well, I got up with my back hurting this morning. Then I tripped over my dog, and
Yeah.
and you're just like, okay, that was just it's supposed to say, fine, how are you?
That's a rhetorical question.
Yes.
We don't need a medical laundry list of what's ailing you.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so what I'm doing is I've got these ridges of paint in here, and I took some more paint off of my brayer, and I'm trying to even this out so I don't have ridges of paint or stripes of white, which for some reason I cannot get rid of to save my soul. I don't know if the canvas board is warped, which is a good possibility, or what, but I'm going to switch off to a brush and get rid of those real fast, and then we'll move on. They hired this one woman one time to be a bagger. Well, to be a bagger, you got to get curtsy, and you have to bag as fast as you can, as accurately as you can. You know, there's a right way and a wrong way to bag. I mean, they show you video to how to do it. It's called building walls and all this sort of stuff. But anyway, this gal was overweight and moved about as fast as a turtle. And when you sent her out to get buggies, she'd come in with 2. And I'd say, how many buggies did you bring in? She'd say 2. I said, well, can you bring in 3? I don't think I can do 3. I'll stick with 2. You know, you send a guy out and they at least get 6 or 8. So it would take her forever to fill up the buggy rack inside. So that didn't work out. So they put her to stocking at night, and she couldn't do that. So they said, okay, we're going to try her in produce. First thing in the morning, all she has to do is go through and pick out all the overripe vegetables and fruits and throw them in a bucket and take them to the back and dump it in the garbage. Every day. It was like her first day on the job. Every day. So the woman who was running produce came over and told me one day. Now the woman was married and she had 3 kids under 5, and she probably was under 25. And her husband wasn't a Nobel Prize candidate either. But she came over, the good employee came over and she said, you know what she said today? And I said, I have no idea. She said, here she is with 3 little kids in the house and gas heat, and it's cold. And she said, you know, I don't know if to get a personalized license plate or to pay the gas bill. I said, you pulling my leg? She said, no, she said that. I said, well, I hope she's got the common sense to buy some gas for the kids.
Yeah.
She didn't last long in produce either. Okay, this has got to dry before I can trace on the steeple. But as you see, it's one shade of blue. The brayer worked almost all the way through. So I'm going to lay that there, and I'm going to switch back to the silver car. And
I'm gonna move that.
oh, okay.
Yeah,
my
you
bad.
can see the paint in there.
My bad. And since this is so detailed, it's easier if I can rest my hand. So that's why I'm going to do this flat today. And somebody was asking me a couple weeks ago about cleaning the palette.
Yeah.
You know, the wood lid for this, I don't really clean well. But in here, when I need space to clean, I just take a paper towel and wipe a clean space. And I'm gonna have to have a lot of light grays, which equals out to silver. So I'm gonna erase a lot of this. My first retail experience was working at Kmart. And I worked at a front register, and I also worked in sporting goods and automotive. So I was working night one night, we closed at 9 o'clock, and it was just pouring. I mean, just torrents of rain. And I was as bad as Gary, I didn't have a jacket. And this customer comes in, and I mean, she was beating on the door, so they let her in. She said, I have a flat tire. I was about the only man in the store. So I said, okay, I'll go fix her flat tire. So I'm out there in the pouring rain. She's holding the flashlight so I can see what I'm doing. She's got the umbrella, but she's holding it over her, not over me. So when I get home, literally I could have wrung my clothes out. I was just drenched. Not a lot of fun. Okay, so I've got my car and my photograph, and really, it's kind of strange. There's just different shades of gray. The exception is right here on this fender, and that's white, and it's a white reflection over here on this lake. It's picking it up all the way over here. So everything else is a shade of gray. So here we go. First I have to make up multiple grays. I'm going to use some ultramarine and burnt umber. I was going to say cobalt, but I don't have any. I'm not getting up again for a while. Okay. This is a small area to fill in, but I want to make sure I get enough mixed up. I can look at this and tell it's too blue, so I'm going to add some more burnt umber to this party. And that will work perfectly somewhere on this car. If not, I can always lighten it or darken it. And move this out of the way too. More gray, less white. Now that I look at this at an angle, it's a little too blue, so I'm going to add a little more brown to this. These lights are very
Right.
unforgiving. And we'll do a darker shade. Your sister's house, how do they heat it?
Huh.
How big is the backyard?
It's pretty big. I mean, it's not like ginormous. They have enough back there to have a trampoline, a big play set. It's fenced in. I don't know the actual square foot of it or anything.
We are still looking.
Yeah, so are they.
I think I'm gonna call Leanna tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay. So, if you want to sketch the windows in with a pencil or something, that's fine. All this is dry now. I don't know the model, but I know this is a Dodge because the back of the car slants backward. I always wondered why they did that. Being tall, I barely fit in the back seat now. And when they slant the roof back, you know, that's just easier way for me to bump my head. The windows, of course, are glass, which is clear, but they appear to be dark here. But what they're doing, they're actually reflecting what's around them. So in the first two windows, they are reflecting part sky and part of these trees, and the little back window is reflecting all sky. And it's going to read pretty much black because there's nothing to reflect back there, since the sun's not back there to help. Can you see okay what I'm doing? Oops. Really help that situation. I'm going to go with the wheel wells here. This guy's actually got to be moved forward a little bit more. It's something else I always teach my drawers, is to always cross-reference what you're doing. And what I mean by that is, you can look at the object you're drawing, but also look at something behind it, or beside it, or down the road from it, or across the table from it, whatever, so you can get the exact size of things and won't be shocked. thought this car had some foreign decal or something on the back. It's a drop of water. I think that happened last week. I sort of miss the old cars because I think a lot of the new cars look alike.
I just bought yesterday actually a 2002 4Runner. I like the older models better.
Did you say you bought a new one?
Yeah, 2002 4Runner.
Cool.
I sold my 2010 Honda to get a 2002 4Runner.
Sounds like a deal I'd make.
Yeah, because I like the older models better, the older cars. They seem to be more long lasting too.
Okay. Enough drawing. We can go from there now. I can't believe how much cars cost now.
I know. I want a truck like so bad, but
You want what?
a truck.
I think they're obscenely priced.
Yeah, like if you find one low mileage, it's like highly priced. If you find one lowly priced, the mileage is crazy high.
You want a full-size one or a smaller one?
I want a double cab because I have my nephews like a lot of the time, like helping with school and stuff, so I have car seats. And I mean, I bought that 4Runner yesterday off my aunt and uncle and sold mine because I'll be able to pay the 4Runner off quicker than what I was paying on my other Pilot because I want to get a truck. So, but right now they're super crazy high. Even the older models are high.
I see the ads on TV. $15,000 off. I'm like, I wouldn't pay $15,000 for this. You know, crazy.
I'm like $15,000 off of $75,000 is still a lot of money. My uncle, he just got a new Tacoma because he was looking at, he's wanting like a 14 or 15, and he said he might as well just get a new one because of the pricing.
My father had always was a Chevy, or at least GM man, and the last vehicle he bought was a Ford pickup. I'm like, what are you doing buying a Ford? He said, oh, I got a good deal on it. And the paint started falling off the hood a month after he bought it, and it was a brand new truck. So he took it back to the dealership, and they repainted it. It fell off again.
Yeah, I've only had Hondas and Toyotas. My I've grown up with my family telling me to steer clear of Fords and certain brands. But I have like friends that have only had Fords and loved them to death, so I don't know. I think it's kind of hit or miss.
I'm redoing the wheels of the car as we speak. My car uses mid-grade gas, and I said, you know, it cost me $3 to get gas now. My sweetie said, I have no sympathy for you. You bought that car. So, a good thing is it gets good gas mileage, isn't it?
I know by the time we go to the beach this summer, gas will be $4.
Of course. Gets close to Memorial Day.
Yep.
And they jack that price every year.
I'm missing that $1.89 gas or $1.69.
I know that COVID was a terrible thing and we're not through with it yet, but it did provide low gas prices. That's the only good thing I can think about. All those deaths, you know, that's just devastating. I'm basically repainting what I painted before with this silver. I'm gonna have to go back and do some of this again. But at least it's looking a little bit more like a car every time I do it. I'll put the reflection on the water in last. Sort of like the icing on the cake. When I first moved here, the only thing I saw on TV were car ads.
Yeah.
Now there's a lot of car ads.
Especially if you watch the local channel.
Yeah, but now they have branched out. They do mattresses, and nationally they do a lot of medication for diseases I didn't know people had. It's not just once or twice, it's like all the time.
So I feel like it's gonna happen in the future. We'll have one of those law commercials be like, if you got COVID vaccinated in 2020, you're liable for compensation.
I am sorry that people have these afflictions and whatnot, but it seems to me like they could come up with some different ads. They're making enough money. You know, my wife got bit by a dog
Yeah.
a week ago. She went to one of these docs in a box, and he only gave her 3 days of antibiotics. Well, her knee got worse and worse, and I mean, that thing is about that big around, and bright red, and purple and black, and it's just so tender she can't even put a sheet on it. So I finally convinced her to go to our family doctor yesterday, and he was just appalled that the box doctor had only given her 3 days worth of antibiotics for a dog bite. So
Yeah.
he gave her 10 days, and said that that ought to solve the problem, but the hematoma inside, where it's blood red now, was yellow, and now it's because of the infection. It's about that big around, if not bigger, and it's hard as a rock. She was afraid he was going to drain it, but he didn't. She's got a pretty high threshold for pain.
Mhm.
All right, what I'm doing is lightening this one shade of gray I had, silver I had here. These wings aren't tall enough, I know that. What color's your new ride?
It's gold.
Classic.
Yeah, it's nice. For 2002, I mean, it has its nicks and stuff like that, but
Well, mine is a 1990, so it's an antique.
how many miles that thing got on it?
230 some, I think.
Have you had it since the 90s?
No, I bought it used. I bought it when I came down here. And it's had a new motor put in it, so I'm not sure how many actual miles are on the second one. So basically, I'm putting on the last coat here, hopefully. That went where I didn't want it to go, so I'm going to scrape it back. How's your high school alma mater doing in football this spring?
I don't know, really. Baseball's just now starting up at DB, and then the basketball team did pretty good this year. I don't know much about the football. I know they had a good fall season.
I saw on the news the other night where some local girl made it to the nationals in track.
Yeah.
That's great. I ran track one year in high school, and they had 2 activities buses, and for some reason, our coach could not get a bus for our meet, so he quit. And that was the best shape I'd ever been in. Better than when I played basketball or football or wrestled or anything, because all you do is run.
Uh-huh.
I keep laying my hand in gray paint over here. So that sort of put an end to my track career.
Played basketball and softball my whole life. Actually, my senior year, well, after my senior year I was done with basketball and I ended up playing college softball. But I've always hated running. I played ball my whole life, but I've always hated running.
I liked it. I was slow, but I liked it. I'll tell you how slow I was. During preseason, they made us do 50-yard dashes in football, and then we had big old leather high top boots and cleats about as long as my finger, steel cleats. And one of my best friends and I were both slow, so they teamed us together. And by the time we got to the 50-yard line, they accused us of stopping and eating a sandwich on the way.
Yep.
We both played tackle. I always wanted to play tight end, but they said no way.
Didn't have the speed for that?
Man,
You didn't have the speed for that?
yeah. Although I did hold a record at good old Club Forge High School for many a year for a tackle. I jumped on a fumble in the end zone and scored a TD. You're right, that Broad Street barbecue was good.
Yeah, it is good.
I saw they wanted something like $8 for a hot dog. I thought, dinner may be a little bit more expensive than I thought it was going to be, but it worked out okay.
Yeah, they got good tea too.
I'm not much of a tea drinker. Unless it's hot, I'll drink a cup of hot tea about once every 10 years, I think. I used to drink more than I do now. first wife and I had a percolator for coffee and a percolator for tea. We drank a lot of tea then. I'm not sure about this car. It'll look like a car. I'll tell you a funny story. I had this older gentleman in oil class one time, and I was always trying to get him to slow down. I mean, he was hell-bent that he was going to get a painting done in 2 hours. I'm like, it's very hard to do. It's very hard to do as a beginner. I said, tell you what, you like cars, I like cars. Bring me a picture of a car, and you have the same picture, and we'll do step-by-step car. So his son had redone a 54 Chevy pickup. So I'm there, I've got my picture of it, he's got his picture of it, and you know, I'm drawing her off with paint just like I normally do. And at the end of 90 minutes, I look over and he's finished. I said, I thought you were going to be working along with me. And he said, you're too slow. Well, I spent 6 weeks on that truck, and it looked like a photograph. His poor truck didn't look like a Chevrolet. It looked like a Studebaker that somebody had stepped on. And I kept saying, man, you rush too much. You know, take your time. It's not who finishes first, it's who has the nicer painting. He said, oh, I just get too impatient. I just get too impatient. He was like 84 or something. I never could get him to slow down. It was a dually pickup, and he didn't even realize that. He just had 4 wheels on it, and he'd seen the thing in real life.
He wasn't paying attention to the detail.
He did this one painting of a bird, and it was a pretty nice painting of a bird. And I told him, it's a nice painting of a bird. When are you going to give it an eye? He never painted in the eye. And he never did give that poor bird an eye. And he was not real verbal, but he'd say, you know, art is in the eye of the beholder. And I'd say, yes, you're right. So if he didn't understand something or didn't like it, he'd say, art is in the eye of the beholder. And I just agree with him. I do. Funny. He came in one day, and he always walked every morning. I mean, he walked miles. He was in better shape than I was. But he came in one day, and he had done a painting on the area that he walked every day. And it was a nice painting. And instead of doing the blacktop gray, or just black, he had done it blue. And I'm like, this is great. You know, because I kept telling them, try to vary the colors in your painting some. And I said, this looks great. And all the women in the class came in and they said, man, this looks great. I think he took it home and painted over it.
He painted black or something?
He painted over it. I don't know why. He came in one day and he painted the outer space scene with, you know, the galaxies and all that. And it was a big white spot in the middle of it. And I looked at it, I knew exactly what he had done. He said, I don't know what this white spot is. What he had done, he had copied off the TV screen. And the white spot was the reflection of his flashbulb.
Oh.
And he didn't realize that, so he put it right on him and painted. This gray is a little more purplish than what I've been using. Maybe I'll go with this. I think that'll work better. But he would give you the shirt off of his back. He was a good guy. He provided for his family for decades. And somewhere along the line, one of his sons was killed in a car wreck, I think. And of course, that's awfully hard for any parent. And I don't know if the wife took it worse or what than he did. But Richard would have a little glass of wine every night, and she wouldn't let him keep it in the house. He had to take it out in the garage. And they were both very religious. I thought, well, that's kind of cold. But that's neither here nor there, I guess. Let's see how this bad boy's looking. I'm going to work on this tree a little bit, get away from that tightness of the car. This is some sort of a pine tree. And the sun is behind all of this, so it's in silhouette, it's black. Or appears to be black. Something else I can do, let me do that real quickly. Well, I'll wait for that, the car's still wet. I was gonna put those little parking things down to keep you from driving over the bank into the lake. Do you know if the Carvers met this morning, Amber?
The what?
Huh?
The what?
The Carvers, wood carvers.
No, they haven't been meeting yet.
Okay, as always, starting off with a tree, I'm going to use the bigger brush. This is a number 4 flat. And normally I am sort of leery of putting a big tree right here on the left of a painting because it almost acts like a stop sign saying don't come into my painting. But since it's got so many limbs going this way and this long body of water going this way, I think I'm safe. The eye is going to go this way, in other words. Going back to Miss Van Leer for Miss Van Horn for a minute. You know, I never saw her sit down. I never saw her look at the book. I think she had both sets of books we used memorized. And our grammar book was about that thick, and the literature was about that thick, so that's a lot to memorize. And I know she was in her 60s when she taught me. Because she'd been there for a long time. She had taught a lot of people. Like you're talking about John teaching your father. John allowed the other day that he's 79. I didn't know that.
I would have never guessed that.
Nope. Satchel Paige, who said age is just a number, or how did he? It was some humorous saying. I can't remember. It's all. This. Can't have the paint too thin, because what it's doing is it's sort of leaching out into the weave of the canvas here. I'll make that limb a little thicker. Take care of that. I still think this is relaxing. May not be the most scintillating video, but I think it's very relaxing.
Yes, it is. Where is this? Is this a light or?
I'm sorry.
Is this a lake? The pictures at a lake?
Yes. The same lake, the one in town. What is that, Watauga? Or no, it's
Warriors? Or you got Warriors?
it's Warriors. Warriors Path.
Okay.
Basically, how I did the grass up there today, I took this small rigger and I had several different colors mixed up. I had a light green, light goldish, Naples yellow type color, and then I added white to both of those, and then I added those two together. So I basically had 3 or 4 different colors going, and I would take the brush and I just lay it and tap it like that, just tap it, tap it, tap it, tap it. And I did that about, I don't know, 3,019 times or something to get all these little things in. Unless some of what I did last week showed through, so I still got some of that texture that we did with the toothbrush and with the knife. Do you need a supply list for the drawing stuff?
I think I still have it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I have it in my folder.
Okay. I like this rigger, but it does not hold as much paint as the other one I was just using. So I have to stop and reload more often. All these little limbs out at the very end. Like I said, it's some sort of a pine tree. I'm not sure what kind. Get it while it's wet, you can get rid of it. You know, trees get these things on, and they're, I don't know if it's like a flaw in the wood, if it's a parasite or some sort of, it's a growth, I know that, but it's called a burl. And once it's cut into lumber, it's some of the most pretty wood you've ever seen. A lot of wood turners make bowls out of burls. And some of them can be, you know, this big around on a big old oak or weeping willow or something.
What color do you think the night sky will be? Because it ain't like solid black, is it?
Some nights it is. some nights it's a real deep blue, so blue it almost looks black. You got to get away from cities because the way cities are lit, they don't shine their lights down necessarily. They shine them this way or up, and that just, I mean, I can see the lights of Bristol from my front yard.
Right.
And I live like 8 miles from Bristol. I can see the lights from Kingsport. I'm like 9 miles from Kingsport, from my backyard.
Yeah, you have to go out in the country somewhere to see the stars and.
Yeah, that's why astrologers have such trouble with seeing outer space. That's why they go to remote islands in Chile and Hawaii and whatnot, so they can get away from civilization and the light pollution that we make them avoid. I asked the guy who did the painting of the truck from the photograph if he gave the painting to his son. He said, nah, it wasn't any good. I said, man, if you just slow down a little bit. And then he was telling me, you know, when he was in grade school or high school, he had this teacher who said that he was talented. Well, since he was 84 and he hadn't done anything since grade school or high school, it had probably gotten rusty. Okay, this is enough limbs on this guy. Need to go back and add some tires and darken these windows on this car. That's dry. I'm going to go ahead and show you how to make like a pattern to get these parking things the same size. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a piece of masking tape. This stuff is good for a lot of things, I tell you. And it's right over the water here. So I'm going to take my knife. I'm cutting just through the masking tape. I'm using the sides of the masking tape excuse me, as a reference pardon me, to try to keep it straight on the top and the bottom. Okay, we are going to use the stencil part of this. This part in my right hand, and not this part. actually, in front of this car, there's only a fraction of this showing. I'm gonna pencil that in. Move down the way a little bit and do a full one right about here. And just like the tree trunk, these guys are in silhouette also, except for just a skinny little line of light gray at the top. So, you can't reach that clock, can you, Amber?
No, I was gonna try and see. I got you on
Okay, that's done. So what I'm gonna do is do that skinny little line of the light gray. Good job. Just like I had this little green line back here showing, this is going to show on the tops of these concrete pieces. I don't know what they're called. Yeah, I got here today and started painting the grass on that little painting there, and then I started working on this one and gave 2 coats to the little girls, and Amber shows up. And I look at the clock and it's like 10 to 1. I said, "You're early, aren't you?" She said, "No." I said, "What's 10 to 1? She said, "That clock's wrong."
He has a little hour behind.
I had totally forgotten about daylight savings time. While this little line dries, I'm going to go in and work on the tires of this car. But all this black mixed up. Might as well, right?
How long did it take you to master the art of tree making?
I don't know. I've been making trees since I was freshman in college.
Cause they're like realistic looking.
Thanks.
Yeah, I never thought like the more branches the better.
Need a little thicker paint. Got it too runny. The good thing about this car is underneath it's all shadow. Don't have to worry about that. It's like spring out there today.
Sun's out finally. I think it's supposed to start raining again though. Let's see.
And then the grass will start growing about 3 inches a day.
Yep.
I've got a couple spots in my yard, and I'm not lying. The grass is this tall.
I mowed mine yesterday and weed eated because I'm like you, some of mine was still low, but others were still super high. My yard's spotted like that.
I'm trying to put it off as long as I can. Because once I start, I know it's not going to stop. Nobody close to us in the neighborhood has done it, so I don't want to be the first one either. Sometimes you have to talk to your paintings. I like to teach collage, and collage is where you use bits of paper and thread and old pieces of painting, whatever you want, photographs, whatever you want to use, and make them into a composition. Anyway, I did this one collage class, and I noticed that everybody in there, including myself, talked to their collages as like, come on, stay still, move over. You know, I didn't mean to put you there. Here, come here. It was kind of funny. I didn't feel so all alone talking to my work.
What's the difference in collage and mixed media?
Not a lot. Although mixed media is usually like if I did watercolor painting and then did some acrylic on top or on parts of it,
Okay.
or did some pen and ink on it. Had a big blob of black on the end of my brush. Didn't want that. You know, I think it would be very hard to design wheels. Because you're stuck inside that circle. And there's not much way out of it. I'm gonna do the back one with black, and the others are, like I said, the sky and the trees sort of reflected in there. Oops, I just put that in the wrong place. I wasn't even talking. Well, I checked the photograph. There's there's two shapes here almost identical, and I put it on the wrong one. No harm, no foul. I got it before it dried. Now we go back and put it in the right place. I've been watching this Polish series on Netflix called Ultraviolet. And the whole premise is the cops are too busy to solve some crimes. So these people who are really handy with computers have formed like a club, and they help the cops.
Huh. That's pretty neat.
Yeah. And is not ongoing, like every show starts, middle, end. Speaking of which, I was watching the series Bolivar for a while, and it was like torture. I made it up to maybe episode 12, and I thought, well, I'll just see how many are in this series. It was only 1 year or one season. You know how many were in that series? It was like 60 some. Why they didn't break it up into like 4 seasons, I don't know. But I'm like, click.
Yeah.
This is no good for me. Okay, well, I got the black going. I'm going to go in and do these little concrete parking things. Leaving that little thumbnail of light gray showing. Did we just have that one question this week? Nobody's sent us any photographs yet?
No photographs.
Man. I'd love to see some of the work.
Mm-hmm.
And don't worry about if you think it's good or not. Okay. No harm, no foul there. Lock that. This is actually a lighter gray than what I've got it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that so it can be drying. I'll make this tree trunk a little lumpier. Too straight of a line. Gotta watch out for that in nature. What this is a little bit of moisture on the pavement. There are going to be some cast shadows in this from a tree further over here. It'll look pretty cool. Actual grass right in here. Give me some winter grass color going here. Okay. Put that on a little thicker. This will go with the tail lights, which are red. Painting needs some warmth. And there's little bits of grass in between these parking pieces. A little bit greener. And make beside the car a little bit greener. Okay. All this is going to be dark shadow here. Straight back. work on the windows a little bit here. Need a real light blue. That's pretty light. Okay. This one divider here between the front and middle window is black, but the last divider is that silver. There's Wacky Car Designers. I'm gonna paint that dark upright in there. Way too much water. Light touch. It's funny, the reflection in the window of the woods is a lot greener than the woods. Don't ask me why. Making headway, guys, making headway.
Looking like a car.
Great. those too light, but I can darken them later. I'm gonna work on these red tail lights.
I think that clock up there needs a battery.
I'm sorry?
I think that clock up there needs a battery.
Um,
'Cause that's the time I changed it to. And it's still that time.
what time is it? How much time do we have?
We got about 3 minutes.
Okay, I can do tail lights in 3 minutes. So anyway, guys, I hope you have fun painting this week. I'd love to see what you've got going. And if you have any questions or comments, please let Amber know, and she will pass it right on to me. So keep your palettes flat and your brushes wet, and we will see you next time.